Hello class. I thought it might be beneficial if I did a little podcast of our graphing exercise yesterday so that you had something to reference while you're working on your graphs. We'll be doing more graphs throughout the semester, so I think this will be helpful. So what I've done is I've populated my spreadsheet with some artificial data, and the first thing that we need to do is we need to go and select our data, and then we come up here to the Insert tab and click Insert. And this brings up a menu that has a whole select types that we could choose from. I'm going to choose the bar graph. I recommend though that you also click on the other graph types and see what they look like. Based on the type of data that you're graphing would maybe determine the graph type or the chart type that you choose. We're just going to take the standard 2D column chart bar graph here. And so you see once I picked on the type of graph that I wanted, that it went ahead and populated the fields with my data. And then we can use these chart tools options up here to change the color scheme of our bars if we want them to be more similar in color. I like the one where they kind of stand out against each other because it's real easy to see the data series. But this graph is missing a lot of elements that we need in order to get full credit when we turn in graphs. And so some of the things we need to add are the axes labels and a name for the chart, and we need to format our data series and our legend. So if you come up here to chart layouts, you can toggle through all these different layouts, and you see that each one looks a little bit different. They all have a little bit different element to them. And the one that we're looking for is this one. So this gives us our data series, and it gives us our axes titles. Oh, excuse me, that's not the one that we want. We want this one. There we go. And so what we want to do is now we want to come over here and we want to actually work on editing our graph. It's not giving me the one I want. There we go. So you can see just all the different ones that are available there. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and click on the title, and we're going to edit this first. And we're going to call this Inter-Pacific Competition over time. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to edit our y-axis label. I did not want to get rid of it. I simply want to click in here. And we're going to call this number of individuals. And then we're going to edit our x-axis, and we're going to call this years. And then what we want to do is we want to fix our legend. So in order to change the names of the data series in the legend, we actually have to come over here and choose one of our series of data, and then we right click on it and it says select data, and we're going to select the data, and that opens up the select data source box. And here's where we can enter each one of these individually. And so we're going to edit them individually, and we're going to call this first one harvest mouse, or harvest mice, plural. And then we're going to call the second one deer mice. And we're going to call the third one, oops, and we're going to call that third one pocket mouse, mice. And we're going to call that last one house mice. Okay, and then we'll hit OK. And then now you see that our legend is nicely named. Now, if we want to move this legend, we can right-click on it, and then what that does is we can click the Format Legend tab, and then we can move that legend wherever we want it, to the top, to the bottom, to the left, to the right. Sometimes along the bottom is a nice option, and so let's see what that looks like. So that looks nice, so we'll leave it there. And then what we can do is we can actually make this chart larger or smaller by simply clicking on the outline of it, and then we can drag it and we can make it bigger so that it fits our page nicer. And then one of the last things that we want to do is we want to add data series, and so we right click again and we do just add data labels, and you see that that puts numbers at the top of our bars, so it's very easy to see what the population size was, and we'll do that for each of our populations. And then if it's too busy because our data labels are too large, what we simply have to do is just select them, and then we go to our home page and we come to the font size that we want, and we can change that font size. It only goes to 8 in the box here, but I can come up here and physically change that to any size that I want based on how big I want my data labels to be. I don't want the graph to be too busy, so I'm going to choose to make them smaller. Alright, and so then now that's done. And so then for one of your graphs, you're asked to add a trend line. And so what we can do is trend lines are helpful if you're looking for some type of phenomenon in your data. So some interesting interactions between the different data series. And so you right click again and you see where it says add trend line. We would just simply click on that, and then it gives us a lot of different options to choose from. And the one that we're going to choose is we're going to choose polynomial. And because this will fit our data nicely. So depending on the type of data you have, you may want to choose a more appropriate trend line. So this shows us the trend for the pocket mice. And then also this looks significant. So we'll come over here and we're going to add a trend line to this as well. And what trend lines do is they help you see trends more clearly in your populations. And so here we see that we have one population that seems to be increasing over time and another population that is significantly decreasing over time. The other two seem to be more stable populations. And so I hope that you found this little exercise helpful. One thing that this tells us for sure is that all species of native mice are impacted by the non-native house mice, and the most impacted species of all is the pocket mouse. Alright, well thank you, and I hope you found this useful. This graphing exercise was done in Windows 7 with Excel 2010. So if you're using an older version, some of the instructions might not be in the same places. And if you're using a Mac, that's going to be a different graphing process. And so you may need to find someone who's good at graphing on Mac. I'm good at graphing on PCs. Okay, well thank you.